There was a huge slam as the bolts of the jail door were shifted into place. Isaac had found himself flung onto the dirt-ridden earth floor in contempt and disgust. His captors walked away back toward the flagons of ale they had left at their guards' posts, laughing and exchanging jests over racism on the way. It's a funny thing. Social equality, Isaac reflected, as he hoisted himself back up on the rickety bench. It was 1290, and the stigma blinded the populace to the possibilities of an advantageous allegiance, merely on the word of a dominant patriarch. The rotting flesh of those before him sweltered in the corners of the dank, cavern-like cellar in Christchurch Abbey. Word had recently reached him, through word of mouth around the underground chambers, that only 1 month after this, King Edward had recently issued a decree expelling the Jews from the kingdom. Was it the accusation of murder that had been levelled at him by the Archbishop that had precipitated this final decision of exile? Isaac de Poulet felt the crack of his beaten bones as he shifted into a lying position upon the bench, closing his tired, unrested eyes. The Jew's ocular capacity had been severely compromised during the torture that he had just endured, his head searing in pain as the wealthy merchant remembered having his eyes held open whilst molten silver poured around them. He would not last much longer. The murder of a child was not something the public would tolerate, least of all from someone who had defied Edward I, and its attacks to raise funds for the war in France. Some of his contemporaries were simply accused of counterfeiting coin, and banishment was a result of that. Such a fate would have been better than the one he was now facing at the hands of the dark. Perhaps tolerance of ethnic diversity would never end. Some say it never has. It was the decrease from 91% in 1991 to 86% of the population really began to present the fear instilled in the population today. It was in 2011 when the last statistic really took hold in our postmodern age. Even before that, the white ethnic group of the UK were not overly fond of their diversity. Margaret Thatcher said in 1978 that the British character has done so much for democracy throughout the world that if there's ever any fear that it might be swamped, the people are going to react in a rather hostile to those coming in. She was right about the fear instilled in societies, burgeoning hostility, though it is a mistake to think this apprehension is a new one. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation has devoted years to the analysis and individualistic approach the way in which this phenomenon is seen. Their work on social exclusion affects many minorities throughout the choices they have made, and the sort of apathy that results in them has enabled the recognition of the poor being more prominent in today's society. Although the increasing shift in the predominance of affluent minorities increased during the 1990s to a point where we see the rise in government parties like UKIP today. Nigel Farage has said that it's not about mass immigration at a time when 21% of the people, young people, can't find work. It's about giving 50 million days to the EU when the public finances are under great strain. Though it was in the 1300s, Edward III was at war with France and in debt to Florence. Italy was one of the many places such minorities as the Jews fled after their extraction from England. Half a century later, great fortunes were again being made by the financiers of the city. Prominent among them, in the 15th century, were two families, the Pazzi and the Medici. Many think that we in the UK are makers of our own fears as a result of past sins in this regard. Hate and ethnic fragmentation devolved from these mistakes. Private dependency is simply having domestic needs, a factor which is still a drain on the family unit of all. Public dependency is a drain upon the state, which is where a lot of racism stems from today. It was in 1218 that Henry III had the Edict of the Badge enacted. England became the first country to force Jewish contingents to wear a yellow badge, indicating their fragmentation from society. To make this worse, the taxation of this minority increased to 20,000 marks by 1272. Have attitudes really changed that much? The vaunted phrase of ethnic diversity would suggest that it has. However, the Equality Act of 2010 does not cover those entering the priesthood or other such religious vocations. Indeed, it might be said that it was from here that the problem of ethnic fragmentation stems. In 1275, coin clipping was made in Catholic Venice. In 1278, raids on suspected coinage were carried out. According to the Barry Chronicle, all Jews in England, of whatever condition, age or sex, were unexpectedly seized and sent for imprisonment to various castles throughout England. While they were imprisoned, the innermost recesses of their houses were ransacked. Some 680 were detained in the Tower of London. More than 300 are believed to have been executed in 1279. Those who could afford to buy a pardon had a pardon at the royal court and escaped punishment. The important question is, does this impact on how future generations see our attitude towards change and inherent fear of diversity? Does this diversity mean lack of conformism, or is it a way of approaching a culturally embracing society today? In the 21st century, 75% of the population are looking along the Brexit road as a desperate way to rid ourselves of the surplus population. In America, for example, the desperate Trump dictatorship, the Washington Post said that ethnic fragmentation is poised to usher in an era of uncertain obligation and complicated grief, underpinning the extent to which the phenomenon spread. With this in mind, are we to pick up and eject whole families, integrated family units from society, simply because they do not conform to our beliefs as far as sociological security are concerned? With the memory of 1278, when the Jews and minorities were arrested all over England by King Edward II, Isaac de Villiers, might agree. They had the property confiscated in house-to-house searches for fraudulent coin, sitting alone, awaiting death in its putrefying dungeon, would contemplate what would be the end of a realistic cultural diversity. A dream we would die weekend.
Next time on Retrospective Rumours, I look at the education system we cherish so dearly today, and the structuralised prodigy we release from it. Are we proud of our compartmentalised tutelage, or is there another way to assert a more independently thinking future? What are we doing to the possibility of institutionalised drones, and why do we start to produce them? Was it deliberate, or accident, like a lot of things in this world, through religious fervour?
It's just incredible. God. Come all this way just for this. It's amazing. Jeez. That's strange. I don't know. I can't see it for light. Century, 75% of the population looking on the Brexit road are desperate way to rid themselves of the surplus population. Could have been better, I suppose, really.
Terrible.